Part two of the humanistic approach is going to talk about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. Maslow wanted to really get involved in the humanistic approach before it was even really called the humanistic approach. And his whole perspective on psychology was that up until he was kind of getting involved in what became the humanistic approach, he pointed out that psychology was really focused on deficiency, mental illness, problems that people were having, and he wanted to focus on the other half of the continuum. So helping people achieve growth, reach their full potential, achieve happiness. So if we think about humanity kind of on that continuum, he wanted to focus on the upper half of that continuum instead of on the lower half of that continuum. So he really tried to focus all of his research and theory on ideas for how psychology could help humans get better. He wanted to be optimistic and uplifting. So he is not discussed very much in chapter 5 of your textbook, but if you want to learn more about him, he is profiled on pages 156 and 158 of the textbook. So you can check out that little section if you want to read from the book about Maslow. Maslow said that we have a deficiency motive. So basically that means that when we feel a deficiency in our lives, we're motivated to fill it. On the simplest level, you can think about it as something like hunger or thirst, right? When we haven't had enough food or water, we'll feel that deficiency, we'll be motivated to get food or water. He says that we have actually several levels of deficiency needs, or what he calls basic needs. These are both biological and basic psychological needs. He argues that once we feel fulfilled in terms of our basic needs, so our deficiencies have been met and we've reached kind of an equilibrium, we take the next step, which is growth. So we feel fulfilled, we don't feel like there's anything lacking, and only then can we start to strive for self-actualization. So the top level for him, our growth need, is what he called self-actualization. Rogers also called it self-actualization. So Maslow is kind of building off of Rogers. And that satisfaction, that self-fulfillment, that self-actualization is what we do last when all of our other needs are met. And Maslow pointed out that very, very few people in the entire history of the world have actually achieved self-actualization. So he said it's not so much about achieving it as striving for it and the growth that we experience on the journey. So you've probably heard this saying before, that satisfaction or happiness isn't about the end, it's about the journey, right? And so Maslow really believed in that idea. It's about the exploration, the growth, not about the end goal of achievement. So his famous pyramid is shown here. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's called a hierarchy because he says that you have to have the bottom level completed before you can move up. And at any point, you might have thought, oh, I've reached point 3 here, and if something from the bottom drops out, let's say you get fired from your job or your house burns down, or you haven't eaten in a couple of days because people are hoarding all the food, right? Then you're gonna have to drop down and fulfill those needs first. So it's a hierarchy in terms of a prioritization. You're gonna prioritize the basic needs first. Once you have things like food, water, and shelter, then you can move up to safety and security, a feeling that you're not gonna be attacked or threatened at any point. Once you feel basically safe in terms of your physical structure, in terms of your social needs, right? You're not going to have people attacking you all the time, like hate crimes and that kind of thing. Then you can move up to the third level, which is your love and belonging needs. So this is basically feeling accepted by society, having friends, having a romantic partner in your life, so having some human connection. The fourth need is self-esteem. And some people have argued that the self-esteem level and the love and belongingness level, some people have argued that they might want to switch the order of these. The argument is you need to have love for yourself before you can really have happy, healthy relationships with other people. So some people have argued that they would have switched the order of these. But either way, it's basically saying you need to feel like you have people in your life who accept you before you can accept yourself, according to Maslow. So the specific order of needs here might be up for debate, but all of these lighter colors or lower levels are what he calls basic needs. You can see that over here. And then at the very top, you achieve the growth needs, and that's self-actualization. So again, that's striving for perfection. It's making yourself better. And he says it's unlikely that you will actually achieve that, but it's about the effort and feeling like you're improving that will help you to feel happiness. So again, Maslow says we prioritize these needs. They're in a hierarchical structure. We start from the bottom and work up. If something from the bottom is suddenly taken away, if we feel that deficiency, we're going to fill that first. So if you are homeless and someone gives you $20, he argues you're going to spend that $20 on things like food and shelter before you would spend them on something that would help you self-actualize, like a guitar lesson or something like that. We prioritize our basic needs first. He also argues that, again, for most people, you're not really going to ever be able to achieve self-actualization, both because achieving perfection is maybe not a realistic goal, but also because for most of us, we're kind of always worried about those basic needs. So making sure we have enough money to retire, making sure that our house is stable, right? If you're if some appliance breaks, right, you need to get that fixed. So it's kind of a constant struggle to have our basic needs filled. So again, he said not that many people actually achieve self-actualization. He estimated maybe 2% of humans in the entire history of the world. Examples that he talked about were people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi. Now, other people have argued that not even 2% of people get to that point. They argue, is there really any such thing as perfection? So unless we're talking about sort of religious figures like Gandhi or Buddha, or not Gandhi, Jesus or Buddha, if you believe in those religions, you believe that those people might have reached perfection. But if you're talking about a typical human, the argument is there really even such a thing as perfection in humanity? Examples. Martin Luther King Jr. was known for cheating on his wife multiple times and for plagiarizing several of his speeches. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Martin Luther King Jr. is an admirable hero, someone who respect, but the argument is simply no human is really perfect. Gandhi, as another example, wrote in his autobiography about how he struggled with sex addiction when he was an adolescent, and that he chose to have sex with his wife instead of going to his father's deathbed. Even though his father had requested to see him, he said, no, I'm not going to do that. So do we ever really reach perfection is sort of a philosophical or spiritual question. If you're interested in how far you feel like you've gotten on the quest for self-actualization, you can fill out the second personality test that I've put up for you on Canvas. So maybe according to this test, you've achieved self-actualization and you're perfect. So good job, good on you. But even Maslow said that's probably not realistic. Maslow did say that the quest for self-actualization includes what he calls peak experiences. So a peak experience is a rare thing. You are not going to have these every day. You're going to have maybe a few your entire life. A peak experience is basically like a moment of perfection. Time stops. You have a shift in how you think about the world because you've had such an emotional, motivating experience that you know the rest of my life is going to be defined by this moment. So it can be things like, if you're religious, it can be the first time you felt the presence of God. If you've always wanted to be a parent, a peak experience is holding your child for the first time and knowing the rest of your life is going to be defined by the fact that you are now a parent. It can be achieving some goal that you've had your whole life, like you finally get your doctoral dissertation. Something like that, where you feel like this moment is one I will remember forever. It's different for every person. What your goals are unique to you. And again, this is something that you might only experience a couple of times in your life. Students often ask me in class, can a peak experience be something bad, where you know this moment will define me, but it's because something really traumatic happened? Maslow would argue, yes, that can be a peak experience too, if you know, even though this bad thing happens to me, I'm going to overcome it. So the idea of post-traumatic growth. that you had this moment in your life where something bad happened, but it made you realize what's really important about life. It made you prioritize the loved ones in your life. It made you remember what your goals were in a way that you had forgotten. So anything where your whole life perspective shifts and you live the rest of your life post that moment, that is a peak experience. The last thing I want to talk about Maslow that I think is really interesting is he made a distinction between loneliness and solitude. So he said if you see someone who is by themselves a lot, that could be loneliness, it could be solitude. Loneliness is what we consider sort of the bad version of being by yourself. People who are lonely want to be with other people, but they don't seem to have that opportunity. So they seem to be introverted, they have some social anxiety, they feel awkward talking to new people or even talking to old people, like people they've known for a long time, I mean. They are motivated by the fear of social rejection, and so they often are so afraid that people are going to judge them badly that they don't interact with other people. So it's kind of blocking their potential. This is not the same thing as choosing to be alone, which is solitude. Maslow said self-actualized people, or people who are on that journey, will often choose to be by themselves, and that solitude is not the same as loneliness. Because if you are choosing to be alone so that you can really experience your pure self and relax because you can be yourself in an environment where you know no one is judging you, you can really enjoy that time. So the idea is, you might have heard this acronym FOMO, which is fear of missing out, right? People who are obsessed with checking on their phone because maybe someone texted me, I need to know what's going on, I need to know what other people are doing, I need to know if I'm getting invited to that party. He said that people who are on the road to self-actualization don't experience that fear of missing out because they're living in the moment. They're happy with themselves. They don't need this validation from other people because they've already validated themselves. They're happy with who they are. And if you don't like who I am, again, that's not my problem, that's your problem. So I'm perfectly happy being by myself, spending my Friday night at home reading a book, watching TV. I don't need to be invited to the party because I'm happy already. So he makes this distinction, and he says just being alone doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Maybe you're just so happy with who you are that you're perfectly happy being by yourself. That allows you to have that self-development and reflection that he says are really important to achieving yourself and your best potential. One more lecture to go.